The city that fed the sun. High in the forgotten valleys of the ancient world, hidden beneath layers of time, dust, and myth, lies one of the greatest secrets in human history. It is called the city that fed the sun. For thousands of years, legends spoke of a powerful civilization that believed the sun was not just a star in the sky, but a living force that required human devotion to survive. They said this city was built not only of stone, but of faith, ritual, and cosmic knowledge. Most historians dismissed it as mythology. Until now. A discovery that shook the world. In the early 21st century, satellite images revealed something strange in a remote mountainous region. Beneath thick jungle and shifting soil were geometric patterns that could not be natural. Perfect squares. Straight roads. Massive stone foundations. Archaeologists were stunned. What they had found matched ancient myths about the city that fed the sun. When the first excavation began, what emerged was beyond imagination. A civilization built for the sky. The city was designed to follow the movement of the sun. Every major building was aligned with the sunrise, the sunset, the solstices, the equinoxes. The main temple faced the exact point where the sun rose on the longest day of the year. This was no coincidence. The people who built the city that fed the sun understood astronomy with breathtaking precision. The Solar Temple. At the heart of the city stood a massive pyramid. This was the Solar Temple. Its stone steps were worn smooth by millions of footsteps. At the top was an altar where priests once stood, raising their hands toward the blazing sun. According to ancient inscriptions, the sun was a living god. And the city existed to serve it. The belief that controlled everything. The people believed the universe was fragile. They believed the sun needed energy to rise each day. That energy, they thought, came from fire, blood, prayer, and sacrifice. Without these, the sun would weaken. If the sun died, the world would end. So they built a city that existed only to keep the sun alive. Thus was born the city that fed the sun. A city of golden light. The streets were wide and bright. Walls were coated in white stone that reflected sunlight. Temples were decorated with gold and polished copper. When the sun rose, the entire city glowed. To its people, this was proof that their devotion was working. The sun was being fed. Priests of the sky. The highest power in the city was held by the solar priests. They studied the stars, the planets, the sun's movement. They predicted eclipses, solstices, and seasonal changes. To the people, they were not just priests. They were the keepers of reality. Why no one could leave? The citizens believed leaving the city was dangerous. If too many people left, the sun would not receive enough energy. The sky would darken. The world would freeze. So families stayed for generations, bound by fear and faith. They lived inside the city that fed the sun as both worshippers and prisoners. The first clue of a dark truth. Deep beneath the solar temple, archaeologists found tunnels. Inside were stone slabs, chains, burn marks, and skeletal remains. These were not just ceremonial. They were evidence of sacrifice. The sun had been fed. A city that never slept. Inside the city that fed the sun, life moved to the rhythm of the sky. Every morning, as the sun rose, bells rang from the solar temple. The sound echoed through streets, courtyards, and homes. It was not just a signal to wake up. It was a reminder. The sun was alive. And it was watching. People believed that every action they took sent energy upward to the heavens. The people of the sun. The citizens were divided into sacred roles. There were the solar priests, who ruled and interpreted the will of the sun. The sky watchers, who studied stars and seasons. The workers, who built, farmed, and crafted. The offerers, chosen for ritual service. Everyone belonged to the sun. No one belonged to themselves. Homes under the golden light. The houses were built from bright stone that reflected sunlight. Windows were wide. Courtyards were open. Every home was designed so that sunlight would pour in, feeding both the people and the divine. In the city that fed the sun, even architecture was worship. Markets of sacred trade. The marketplaces were alive with sound. Spices, gold, woven cloth, and food were traded beneath banners marked with solar symbols. Every sale was blessed by priests. Nothing could be bought or sold without the sun's approval. Even money was stamped with solar emblems. Children raised for the sky. Children were taught from birth that they existed for the sun. They learned astronomy, ritual chants, sacred stories. Some were chosen for priesthood. Others were chosen for something far darker. The Festival of Light. Once a year, the entire city gathered at the solar temple. Torches burned. Drums thundered. The sun stood at its highest point in the sky. This was the most sacred day in the city that fed the sun. It was the day the sun demanded the greatest offering. The hidden fear. Behind the golden beauty, fear ruled everything. People whispered that the sun was growing weaker. Eclipses were seen as warnings. Cloudy days caused panic. The priests claimed the only solution was more sacrifice. More blood. More fire. More lives. A city trapped by faith. The people could not escape. Leaving meant abandoning the sun. And abandoning the sun meant destroying the world. So they stayed. They prayed. They offered. And they feared. This was life inside the city that fed the sun. The sacrifice and the hidden truth. SEO-optimized ancient history documentary script, fully punctuated. The blood that fed the sky. Deep inside the city that fed the sun, the greatest secret was never spoken aloud. But everyone felt it. The sun did not rise by itself. It was being fed. Beneath the solar temple, the priests maintained a vast underground chamber where fire never went out. The walls were blackened by smoke. The air was thick with ash and fear. This was where the offerings were made. The chosen ones. Children and young adults were selected by the solar priests. They were called the blessed. To the people, this was an honor. To the chosen, it was a death sentence. Families cried in silence as their loved ones were taken into the temple, never to return. The belief was simple. One life could give power to the sun. Many lives could save the world. That was the terrible truth behind the city that fed the sun. The ritual of fire. On the night of the great offering, the city went silent. Torches lined the temple steps. Drums beat slowly. The chosen were led upward. At the altar, fire burned so bright it looked like a piece of the sun had fallen to earth. This fire was said to carry the soul directly into the sky. The priests raised their hands. The crowd knelt. And the sun was fed. The lie that held the city together. But hidden in the deepest chamber was something shocking. Archaeologists later discovered stone records that revealed the truth. The priests had always known something the people did not. The sun was not weakening. The world was not ending. The sacrifices were never needed. They were a tool of control. Fear kept the people obedient. Blood kept the priests in power. The city that fed the sun was built not only on faith, but on lies. The first doubters. Some sky watchers noticed the truth. The sun continued its path no matter how many sacrifices were made. Eclipses happened with perfect predictability. The heavens followed laws, not rituals. Whispers began to spread. The sun did not need to be fed. The beginning of rebellion. Those who questioned the priests were arrested. Some were sacrificed. Others disappeared. But knowledge had already spread. And once people begin to question fear, power begins to collapse. Inside the city that fed the sun, something far more dangerous than darkness was growing. The truth. The uprising and the fall of the solar priests. SEO-optimized ancient history documentary script, fully punctuated. The spark that ignited the city. In the city that fed the sun, fear had ruled for centuries. But truth spreads faster than fire. The sky watchers secretly shared their knowledge with the people. They showed charts of eclipses. They revealed how the sun moved by natural law, not by sacrifice. The lie began to crack. Whispers become voices. At first, people only whispered in alleys and courtyards. Soon, they spoke openly. Merchants stopped paying temple taxes. Workers refused to build new altars. Families hid their children. Faith was turning into resistance. The priests strike back. The solar priests declared rebellion against the sun. Guards were sent into the streets. Homes were searched. People were dragged away. But the more the priests used force, the weaker their power became. The day the people stood together. One morning, thousands gathered outside the solar temple. They did not bring weapons. They brought truth. Sky watchers stood before the crowd, holding ancient records high. The sun does not need blood, they cried. The sun has never needed sacrifice. The crowd roared. The fall of the temple. The priests ordered the gates shut. But it was too late. The people surged forward. The gates of the solar temple fell. The sacred fires were extinguished. For the first time in history, the city that fed the sun stood free of fear. The end of the solar priests. The priests were captured. Their lies were exposed. Their power was broken. No more children would be taken. No more blood would feed false gods. The sun rose the next day, just as it always had. A new dawn. The people looked to the sky in silence. No fire burned. No sacrifice was made. Yet the sun still shined. That was the moment the city that fed the sun truly awakened. The fate of the forgotten city, a golden age without fear. After the fall of the solar priests, the city that fed the sun entered a new age. No more sacrifices. No more lies. No more fear. The people rebuilt their temples into centers of learning. The sky watchers became teachers. Knowledge replaced superstition. The sun was still honored, but now as a symbol of life, not a god that demanded blood. A city of science and light. Astronomy, medicine, engineering, and agriculture flourished. The canals were expanded. The crops grew stronger. The people lived longer. For a time, the city that fed the sun became the most advanced civilization of its era. The great climate shift. But nature has its own power. Centuries later, the climate changed. Rainfall declined. Rivers dried. The soil turned to dust. Even without priests, the city could not fight the sky forever. The slow abandonment. Families slowly left in search of water and farmland. Streets became empty. Markets fell silent. Temples crumbled. The once great the city that fed the sun faded into legend. Buried by time. Sand and earth covered the ruins. Stories turned into myths. The world forgot. Until explorers and archaeologists uncovered stone walls, sun symbols, and hidden records. They had rediscovered the city that fed the sun. The message it left behind. The ruins told a powerful story. Not about gods. Not about sacrifice. But about how fear can control people, and how knowledge can set them free. The sun still rises. Today, the sun still rises over the ruins. No blood feeds it. No fire worships it. Yet it shines. And that is the greatest truth the city that fed the sun ever left behind.